Okay, yeah. So in this case, if you see this right compound, you can come up to here. Or let me just tell from the beginning. Like you have this compound, you are adding lithium aluminum hydride. The hydride is actually attacking. So the configuration that you draw is kind of is the Newman projection formula. And then here you must check the stereochemistry that has been mentioned here. So it is the S, and if you check here A to B to C, so this is also an S. I hope by now you understood how I am doing this S configuration. So this front carbon is 1, pH is 2, methyl is 3. So A to B to C. Okay, how do I? Okay, I have to make it the full screen. Yeah, so this is the front carbon in the center. This is A, this is B, this is C. So A, which is in the front, which is like above the plane. So that is why this is the A, this is the B, and this is the C. So A to B to C, anti-clockwise. So this is S, which is representing this one. And then your hydrogen is here, which is the smallest atom. That is why your hydride will approach from this direction, which will come this way. So you could understand this one now. Now this one, Newman projection formula would be a little difficult if you want to convert from here directly to here. So let's convert into first the this Sohor's projection formula. So here you see that hydrogen OH.
Sorry to interrupt, sir, but your like pointer is not visible.
Is it not visible?
No, sir, the pointer is not visible.
But I can see it. Okay.
So I think it's lagging. So.
Okay. But it is visible to me.
That's why I think it's lagging, so it's not visible to us.
Okay.
Like for us, the PowerPoint is not in full screen yet.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, but I have made it full screen. So okay, but you can see the slide. You can see the structures.
Yes, sir.
Now the pointer is visible. You
No,
can see
sir, not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Let me then go out of the full screen mode and come back again.
Yes, sir. You can also do one thing, and you can continue explaining with the arrow. It was pretty clear with the arrow.
Sorry.
Yes, sir. So you can continue explaining with this cursor, the arrow, like it is clear without the pointer.
Okay, the arrow was visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now the arrow is visible. The arrow is visible now.
No, sir. Earlier it was visible when it was not in full screen.
Okay, let me go back to the laser. Is the pointer visible now? Okay. I'll just escape from the full screen. Yeah. What about now? Is it visible now?
Yes, sir, this is fine. Yes, sir, this is absolutely fine.
Okay. So let me stay in this mode only. Okay. So now let's convert this Newman projection formula into the Sohor's projection formula before we convert this one into the this kind of language on your paper. Okay. So here this is very easy because you just rotate it. Let's say you take the molecule and rotate it a little bit anti-clockwise. Okay. Then these two carbon centers, which was like on 1 point, now come to 2 points. So these 2 points were basically 1 point. You are looking from this side. So these 2 points were like 1 point here. So you just rotate this molecule towards the anti-clockwise direction, you get this one. Because HOHET, same direction, MEPHH, MEPHH. So it is also in the same way. Okay, you can rotate these bonds at any time, no problem. Okay, they will not change its configuration at all. For example, you can put hydrogen here, Me here, pH here. Those things are fine. You understand that, right? You can rotate this bond without any problem. Of course, it will change their configuration, but that configuration is okay. I mean, you cannot put pH close to ET. Maybe pH close to H would be the best configuration, but it's okay. In terms of R and S stereochemistry, this rotation will not change the stereochemistry. Okay. So then now we want to put, let's say, make this as a straight line and rotate it 180 degree. So you bring this pH this side and this carbon that side. Okay. Then what will happen? This pH was on the front. If you rotate, pH will go back. Methyl will come to the front. This was back. This will come to the front. If you rotate, if you make this as a axis on in the middle of this bond, okay, let's say consider there is an axis and rotate 180 degree. So this carbon will come here. This carbon will go there. Phenyl, which was on front, go to the back here. Methyl was back, come to the front. Okay, and hydrogen will remain in the bottom. Okay, I mean, if methyl is in front, hydrogen will be bottom or towards the back. Similarly, then OH, which was here, will go to the back. Ethyl, which was in the which was here, will go to the back. Actually, this I have to draw, otherwise it would be difficult for you to understand in this way. I can understand that. So if you basically it is something like this. So you rotate it and then you have to rotate these atoms also. Okay. So then the simplest way to do is, as I said, phenyl, the biggest, the largest or the bulkiest group will be on the extreme left, and the longest chain will be on the paper. So here ethyl would be the longest. So this is on the paper, on the plane of the paper. And here phenyl should be on the paper. Then here you think this is your A. I mean, if you consider this carbon, this tetrahedral carbon, this is your A, phenyl is your B, this is your C. So A to B to C, anti-clockwise, hydrogen in the back. So this is your A stereochemistry. Think about here, this is your A, this is your B, this is your C, A to B to C, A stereochemistry. So this stereochemistry is written here. Got it? Here. This is your A, this is your B, this is your C, A to B to C. This is clockwise, hydrogen in the back. So this is your clockwise. So this is your R stereochemistry. Consider here, this is A, this is B, this is C, A to B to C, anti-clockwise, but hydrogen is on the front. So actually it would be opposite, reverse. So this is also R stereochemistry. So these and these are also translating. Got it? If you cannot rotate the bond, at least you can assign these to stereochemistry and make it here and check the stereochemistry. This would be very easy for you. Clear? Is this clear to everybody or any doubt?
Yes, sir.
It's clear. Okay. Okay, good. So then we will move to the other for today's class. Okay, so today we will see the reactions involving Grignard reagent. In the last class also we have seen some reactions. Mainly we were synthesizing various functional groups. Today we will see some more reactions. Okay. Okay. No, not this one. This one. So in the last class we have seen formation of this alcohol. Mainly we have seen primary alcohol in the two different ways. One was to use the epoxide, if you remember. One was to use the epoxide and then you add this Grignard reagent and it was forming a primary alcohol. Another was to use chloroethanol sort of moiety, and this Grignard reagent would remove the chlorine part and it will also form the primary alcohol. Now we can make basically primary, secondary as well as tertiary alcohol using Grignard reagent. So for example, if you take, let's say, cyclohexyl chloride, add magnesium in ether, you first generate the Grignard reagent, which is cyclohexyl magnesium chloride. So this becomes then your negative charge, and in this case you use formaldehyde. So this center will attack to this formaldehyde center to form CH2O minus. After protonation, it will form the primary alcohol. Instead of formaldehyde, if you take, let's say, acetaldehyde or any other aldehyde, then in this case one of the hydrogen is replaced by R group. So whatever you will generate, there will be at least 2 R, so it will be a 2-degree alcohol. Okay, so if you have to generate a 2-degree alcohol, you take any aldehyde except the formaldehyde, you will generate the 2-degree alcohol. Similarly, instead of aldehyde, if you take a ketone, then after reaction with Grignard reagent, you will get a 3-degree alcohol. Okay, so that is how you can generate 1-degree, 2-degree, and 3-degree alcohols. Okay, now as I said already, that Grignard reagent is very important in terms of a reagent, in terms of a method, and in terms of a chemical that are widely used for many transformation reactions. One such example is, let's say you want to make this molecule, this alcohol. You can see easily that this alcohol can be made 2 different ways. One way is you can cut here. So this isopropyl group can come from one portion and you can take aldehyde here, or you can cut here so that this aldehyde can come from one portion and this methyl magnesium bromide can come from other side. Did you see what I am saying? This is very important. Okay, so if I cut here, you have a CH3CHO. So basically you take acetaldehyde and isopropyl magnesium chloride or bromide. Then this negative charge will attack here, you generate this. But if I cut here, you take methyl magnesium chloride and take this aldehyde, isobutyraldehyde, and then you make this molecule. Now we have 2 possible way, but which way to be used? That is the big question. So this question is solved by considering which method is easiest one, which starting materials are easily available, which starting materials are less costly, okay, and which reaction conditions are more ambient benign or ambient stable. For example, if a reaction to be carried out at -80 and if a reaction to be carried out at room temperature, you would always prefer room temperature because generating a -80 is require a lot of resources, right? So considering all those factors, you would choose which path to be taken. Got it? So I told 2 different abnormal cases of magnesium of Grignard reagent. You remember, right? The first one was, in one case you have, if you have a beta hydrogen, in that case it does not add as a Grignard reagent, but actually it adds as a hydride migration. Okay, it reduces instead. And the second case was, if you have an alpha hydrogen, it basically takes up that alpha hydrogen to form an enolate. Those are the 2 abnormal cases we have seen for Grignard reagent. Here is another one which is specific for allyl magnesium bromide. Okay, when there is allyl magnesium bromide of this sort, where you have another group here which is unsymmetrical. If you have just normal allyl magnesium bromide, then you have symmetrical from this center or this center if it is in resonance. But if it is in this way, then it is not symmetrical anymore. Okay, in this way you see that this double bond is actually attacking not from this end but from this end. Okay, because it undergoes through a 6-member cyclic transition state. Okay, so this magnesium here, 1 carbon, 2 carbon, 3 carbon, there was a double bond. So this bond actually comes in, this double bond attacks, and this takes up this magnesium. After acidification, hydrolysis, you get, basically it would be OH. Okay, this product. So sometimes this kind of reactions also happen, although not always or not very common, but sometimes. Yeah. Okay, this one is very crucial again, and you will be seeing this one in the later, sometimes later also. And this kind of reaction brought a revolution. So basically, there are two reactions that is possible. One is called Michael reaction, and another is called Robinson annulation. So these two reactions are basically brought a revolutionary thing when a lot of this carbohydrate and not carbohydrate, basically your cholesterol sort of moieties were made, and cholesterol based drugs were synthesized. So basically steroid chemistry, these two reactions like Michael and Robinson annulation, these two reactions are very important when somebody is doing the steroid chemistry. A lot of steroid based drugs were made based on those two reactions. So this is basically the basic of those two reactions. Okay, forget about those two reactions. Let's understand the basic thing, which is very simple anyway. If you have this kind of molecule where there is a double bond, there is a carbonyl compound. This double bond is in conjugation with this carbonyl compound, correct? You take RMGX. This RMGX has two possibilities. It can attack to this carbon or it can attack to this carbon. This double bond will come here, this oxygen will go. If it attacks to this carbon, you get what? It is attacking to this is R double prime. So this R double prime is here, OMGX, dilute HCl, you make OH. So you get kind of a 2 degree alcohol. Okay. Now, but if it attacks here, then you get double bond here, OMGX. After dilute HCl, it forms OH. And after tautomerism, you get the ketone back or aldehyde, depending on this R prime group. If this is H, then aldehyde. If this is carbon, then is ketone. So you get basically a ketone back, and this it attacks here. So which one will form? That is the big question. Okay. Let's look at this molecule first. In this molecule, there are two nucleophilic center. One is this carbon, carbon number 2. If we do the nomenclature in this way, oxygen is 1 atom, this carbon is 2 atom, this carbon is 3, this carbon is 4. Then your attack could happen at the carbon number 2. The attack could happen in the carbon number 4. Okay. Now, which attack will be favorable? It depends on its reactivity. It depends on many factors. Okay, one by one. First, here, because it is connected to oxygen, this carbon center is basically a hard center. Okay, this is a hard center, and this is because this is in conjugation. This carbon becomes the soft center. Okay. Now it depends on the nucleophile. If the nucleophile is hard, then hard combination will take place. If the nucleophile is soft, then soft combination will take place. Now there is number 1 point. Number 1 point says RMGX is a hard nucleophile. So it usually reacts with CO group. So 1,2 addition will takes place in this case, in case of RMGX. Now, number 2, if the steric factor is more at 1,2 position, let's say this R prime group is a bulky group, or this H is replaced with another bulky group, then if this carbon center becomes sterically congested, then 1,2 position will not be very much suitable. In that case, your 1,4 addition will take place. In case where your number 2 carbon is sterically congested, then the nucleophilic attack would be preferable at carbon number 4. Okay, so 1,4 attack would take place. And in this kind of case, the carbon-carbon bond forming reaction happens in the redetermining state. Okay. Now, this example is very important, and this comes in many exams. Okay, and this is a very classic example. How you take this molecule. Okay, you take this molecule, you take methyl magnesium bromide in ether. So as I said, in this molecule, this carbon center is a hard center, okay, and methyl magnesium bromide is a hard nucleophile. So hard combination will take place. So methyl will attack to this carbon. It has attacked here. Now you acidify it. So it forms OH. If you have suitable condition like acidification and heat, then you have dehydration to form this double bond here. Okay. So this compound will be formed finally. Now, interestingly, if you take the same condition, methyl magnesium bromide in presence of copper chloride, okay, 0.01 equivalent, then it has been observed that the product is different. The product is this one. How does this product happen? This product forms because methyl is attacking not in this hard center but in this soft center. Okay. What happens in presence of CuCl? In presence of CuCl, this methyl magnesium bromide form methyl copper. Okay. And in this case, the characteristic of this complex is radical-like. Here, the methyl is not a negative, but it's a radical character. And radicals are mostly soft in nature. So that is why this becomes the soft nucleophile in this case. And it attacks to this soft center. To form this O- protonation gives OH after tautomerization. It forms this compound. Got it? It's clear? This is a very nice example, okay? Okay, so in the last class, I have told about the formation of many different functional groups. Here I will give some more example. So how can you form ketones? One example we discussed is using, you have C triple bond N, you take this Grignard reagent, it attacks there, and then you acidify, you get ketone. There is another one, you can form ketone by using this amides. Okay. In this case, this methyl magnesium bromide attacks there to form OAMe, and this actually form the chelation with this magnesium here, and then after protonation, this N will get protonate and it will become good leaving group, and this H will come, so it forms a ketone here. Okay, so from amides, this sort of amides, you can form a ketone. Okay, this example I have discussed many times, at least I think 3 times. So I think you know very well what is their answer. So if you do not have any protection, this phenyl will attack to this carbon center because ketone is more reactive than ester, you get this product. But if you want to selectively attack in this position, then you have to protect this. How do you do it? You do it by formation of the cyclic ketal. Okay, this is not acetal, this would be ketal. Okay, this is cyclic ketal for protection because this is ketone. From aldehyde you get acetal, from ketone you get ketal, so it would be ketal. And then if you use 2 equivalent of phenyl magnesium bromide, 1 equivalent will attack here to form the ketone, second equivalent will form 3-degree alcohol. Okay, and then you acidify it, then you can remove this ketal production. Okay. Okay, so we are quite close to the last slide. Actually, I had one more, but that I will give to you in your class test. Okay. Yeah, so this one is also the same as another problem that I discussed before. So generally for retrosynthetic approach, you will be learning a lot of retrosynthesis towards your higher class. What does it mean by retrosynthesis? The concept of retrosynthesis is basically you will be given a product and you will be asked to propose a mechanism or to propose a pathway to synthesize that product. So let's say I give you this product and I will ask you synthesize this material or propose a synthetic pathway. then okay, this molecule looks very simple, maybe just one step back and you can easily make it. But there could be very complicated molecule, very big and large molecule, so many stereocenters, so many things. How do you go back? How do you think where to start? In those cases, you need the retrosynthetic approach. Okay, what retrosynthetic approach indicates? Retrosynthetic approach considers the disconnection approach. What did I say? Retrosynthetic approach includes a disconnection approach. What is this disconnection approach? Disconnection approach is nothing but you take the final molecule, go one step back. Okay, go one step back. Where from you can make this final molecule. Then you get two fragments. Then you get from those two fragments again you go one step back. Then you get another one or two more fragment like that. So you go back. That is basically called retrosynthetic by disconnection approach. Okay. So again, how do you choose which pathway or which approach would be suitable or which approach to be taken? Depend on your availability of starting material, cost, reaction condition, all those things. Okay. Okay. There are many approach one could propose, but not all the approaches are actually bringing the result, are fruitful. Okay, some approach, although it is valid on pen and paper, but when it comes to the practical laboratory, then you see that it is not taking place, it is not happening. So there are many factors that dictates that which pathway would be suitable, which pathway would be to be taken. Okay, so I hope now you understood a little bit about the retrosynthetic approach. Let's say we want to consider this molecule. As you can see anyway, there could be three different possibilities. Okay, one is either you can break this bond so that you get pH CH2 minus and form this kind of a ketone. Okay, methyl ethyl ketone. You can break this bond, so you form this kind of long chain ketone and a methyl minus, and you break this bond, then you get this kind of ketone and a ethyl minus. Okay, so now you have to check which starting material could be available very easily, and what about their cost, and then you can propose which method to be taken. For this course, I would not ask you to go that far, at least up to now. Towards the end, we will go and we will see a little bit lengthier reactions, but not at this point. So I'll basically ask you to do very short synthesis. Maybe you have to just go back one or two steps. Okay, so that you can propose what could be their starting material and what are then. Okay, once you go back to get their starting material, you also have to show the forward direction. So first you go back to find the starting material, and then you show the forward reaction taking the starting material. Okay, so if this is your problem, let's say if I have given this molecule in your exam, how can you synthesize? Let's say this is the question: synthesize this molecule by three different ways, three different paths. Then you do the disconnection approach. Actually, this is a double bond and an arrow. That is basically your going backward direction. Okay, then you show these three different procedure. Then you would do the forward arrow and do the reaction using proper starting material, reagent and condition. Okay. Okay, so we will stop here today, and
Sir,
yeah.
Sir, in a general retrosynthesis question, do we have to mention all possible ways of synthesizing a molecule?
No. In general retrosynthetic path, you have to propose only the best possible or the logically possible path. Only one path, not all, not all.
So, like, do we have to write all ways and then arrive at a conclusion that this is the best possible way, or do we directly write the best possible way?
You directly write the best possible way. Whatever you directly write, that is what will be considered as the best possible according to you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one more question regarding the retrosynthesis.
Yeah.
Do we have to consider that whatever reagents we are taking should undergo the same mechanism? Because in this question, all the mechanism should be are same. Like if we take this PHC minus group, then it is RMGX through RMGX it will go undergo the product formation. So we are just disconnecting and undergoing the same process. So is it important to undergo the same process with different reagents, or we will consider other methods also? Like for the synthesis, like we use carbon dioxide as well as cyano group for the synthesis of
Ketones.
carboxyl group. So is it compulsory for retro to undergo the same process?
No, this is a very nice point. So there are, okay, let me not go too far, but I will just tell you one thing. There is something called domino reactions or something like that. Okay. What it does is it does many things in one step, which is not possible in the backward, in the retrosynthetic approach. Okay. Those are super advanced synthetic paths. Okay. I'm not going there, but I'm just telling you a little bit. So in the retrosynthetic path, probably you will not appear at those starting material. But if you in real world, if you take those domino paths, then very short reaction steps, you can arrive at your final product. So to answer your question, retrosynthetic path is to teach you, or is to give a minimum understanding how this reaction could be done. But when you are in practice doing, then it is not the matter. Then what matters is how best you can make it. Okay. But on pen and paper, for your exam academic purpose, you do the retrosynthetic approach logically. Okay. So yes, in here also you can make, like you can put some cyano related groups, or maybe C triple bond N sort of groups, and do that kind of reaction or anything. Okay, any way you want to do, you can do it, not a problem at all. And once you arrive at this disconnected thing, now to go forward, then what you will do, you will show where from this pH CH2 CH2 minus is coming. So you take pH CH2 CH2 Br. How can you make that? That also you can propose. Okay. And then you do the Grignard formation to form this Grignard reagent. Then you take this methyl ethyl ketone and do the forward step. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Got it? Yeah.
So one more question. Can you please go back to the slide where CuCl is taken?
Yeah. This is the one. Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir. So why CuMe form the product? Like why Cu replace MgBr? Is it because of the d orbital at electrons or something else?
Yeah, so yeah, you take CuCl here, okay, and then you take methyl magnesium bromide, and then here it forms magnesium MgBr2. Generally, you will see that MgBr2 or MgCl2, these are a bit more stable. So like CuMe formation, like methyl copper or alkyl or organocopper reagent formation takes place the way it forms methyl magnesium bromide. And here also it forms a little bit less violent, like methyl magnesium bromide is highly reactive. Okay, but when it reacts to copper chloride CuCl, then it forms methyl copper, where it is radical character, which is a bit soft in nature. Okay, so generally a chemical which has a little bit higher chemical potential wants to go towards lower potential, right? You can think in that way. That is also possible. Or you can think in chemical way that, okay, some maybe copper has a vacancy, so maybe it can be accommodated in a better way. That could also be possible to think at. Okay.
Okay, sir.
The main point that in the context of this reaction is methyl is forming the radical which becomes the soft, and that soft center is attacking into this soft center of this species. That is the main point to be taken from here. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so then tomorrow we'll see the organolithium reagent, and then this Saturday then we will have the exam. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So
Okay
in the test, will you include these slides or the only previous slides, up to previous slides we are having test?
Since I have taught this, then we will include this one. Organolithium I will not include, but the Grignard reagent I will include this. Okay. You can also study this one. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Just hold on. I will download the attendance.